The story begins with a dog named Indy who is sleeping peacefully. Soon, he is woken up by the vibration of a phone. Indy immediately feels a presence nearby as the room turns dark, while his owner, Todd, sits right next to him. The name Vera is flashing on the phone screen, and at that moment, a few drops of blood fall onto the phone. Indy realizes the blood is coming from Todd's mouth. A little later, Todd's sister, Vera, rushes into the apartment. Seeing Todd's condition, she panics and immediately calls emergency services, telling them her brother needs help. Meanwhile, Indy keeps staring at a dark corner of the room. After this, we see memories of Todd and Indy from childhood to the present, showing their deep bond. It appears Todd is fighting an illness because he is often seen coughing. Then the scene changes to a rainy night where Indy is sitting in the car, and Todd is searching for something at the gate of a deserted house. He gets a call from Vera, and he asks her if she knows where their grandfather used to hide the gate key. Vera gets angry that he left the apartment despite being sick, but Todd says that going out might be good for him. During this time, Indy sees a shadow behind the car that disappears instantly. Todd manages to open the gate and drives up to the lonely house. He tells Indy to come out, but the dog is scared and takes a long time to step out. As soon as Todd opens the door, Indy hears the sound of a dog crying from the basement. After entering, Todd goes down to the basement to check the fuses, while Indy stands in the dark, watching a shadow. Soon, he hears Todd's voice and runs to him. Todd has fixed the electricity. Later, Todd watches his grandfather's old videos and talks to his sister Vera on the phone. Vera says the house is haunted, but Todd laughs it off. They also talk about their grandfather's dog, whose name was Bandit. At that moment, Indy sees a shadow in the corridor. He leaves the room to check the house. Indy hears some noises from the upper floor and goes there, but he returns when Todd calls him. Suddenly, a strange sound occurs, and Indy sees a shadow in the corner, which he stares at continuously. The next morning, Todd and Indy go for a walk in the woods and reach a graveyard. Todd tells his dog that all his family members are buried here and that they all died at a young age. Then, he goes to pee and tells Indy to stay right there. Just then, a strange figure is seen moving toward Indy, and when the dog turns around, a man dressed in hunting gear is standing there. This is their neighbor, Mr. Downs, who tells Todd that it is hunting season, and the woods are full of animal traps, so they shouldn't be there. Todd tells him that he has left his old home and is now living in his grandfather's house. Mr. Downs mentions that Todd's grandfather used to come here often with his dog, but after he died, the dog was never found. While they are talking, Indy notices a hollow tree nearby, where two glowing eyes are staring at him from inside. The scene changes, and that night, Indy sees his grandfather's dog, Bandit, in a dream. Bandit is wearing a red bandana and looks terrified. A shadow is reflected in his eyes. Suddenly, Indy wakes up. We then see many pictures of the grandfather and his dog, Bandit, hanging in the house. Todd wakes up too, coughing severely. After giving Indy a gentle pat, he goes toward the kitchen. Indy starts sniffing the basement door, where on the other side, we see scratches that look like a dog's claws. After feeding Indy, Todd prepares to leave the house and tells his dog to guard the home. As soon as he leaves, Indy starts making whimpering sounds, clearly showing that he doesn't want to stay alone in this scary house. Out of fear, he runs toward the window to try and get out, but the window is closed, so he stops there. Unfortunately, night falls, and Todd has not returned home yet, which increases Indy's anxiety. Then, suddenly, Indy hears the sound of a dog crying from the basement again and sees that the grandfather's dog, Bandit, is standing right in front of him. Bandit runs quickly toward the upper floor, and Indy follows him into a room. Bandit is nowhere to be seen, but Indy finds Bandit's red bandana under the furniture. As he tries to pull it out, he starts seeing terrifying visions that make him back away in fear. At that moment, he hears the sound of someone coming upstairs and hides under the bed in a panic. He sees that it is his owner, Todd, but Todd looks very sick and exhausted. Indy comes out and goes to him, but Todd scolds him and collapses onto the bed. He starts coughing, and Indy notices bandages wrapped around his arms. Indy tries to comfort him, but Todd suddenly gets angry and tells him to leave. Indy quietly gets off the bed and sits at a distance. Sometime later, Indy wakes up from another nightmare and sees muddy footprints all over the house. He hears noises from below and goes downstairs. He sees Todd sleepwalking and repeatedly hitting his head against the basement door. Indy tries to wake him up. When Todd regains consciousness, he sees that his head is bleeding and tells Indy to go back upstairs. In the next scene, an old video of the grandfather is playing on the TV. In the video, the grandfather is coughing, and at that exact moment, Todd suffers from the same kind of cough. Later, he talks to Vera on the phone. She asks him to return to the city for a few days, but he refuses. Meanwhile, Indy hears the sound of a dog crying again, and starts wandering around the house. He reaches the garage door, which opens by itself, so Indy goes inside. There, he finds his grandfather's old chair and sees a vision where the grandfather is coughing severely and is in great pain. Indy feels as if he is in the place of Bandit the dog, watching his owner suffer. In the vision, the grandfather spits out blood and screams. Just then, a mud-covered hand reaches out toward the dog. When Indy comes out of this vision, a dark shadow appears behind him. A while later, when Todd cannot find Indy anywhere, he goes to the basement to look for him, but he isn't there either. Suddenly, the basement door starts closing on its own, and Todd sees Indy standing right behind the door, covered in mud. He immediately takes him to give him a bath. The next day, Indy and Todd go to the hospital where Todd undergoes an MRI scan. Later, the doctor tells him that his condition is very bad because his illness has progressed significantly. Todd becomes very worried. The following day, Todd is digging in the woods when the neighbor, Mr. Downs, comes up to him and asks what he is doing. Todd mentions the names of some plants he is looking for, but Mr. Downs knows nothing about them. He warns Todd to be careful because he is wandering near fox traps. In the next scene, Todd fills the entire house with plants and candles and uses wooden smoke to protect the house. At that moment, Indy sees the candles blowing out one by one, and a man covered in mud appears from the darkness. Soon, everything returns to normal. Todd then starts crying out of sadness over his illness and hugs Indy. That night, Indy has another nightmare, and suddenly a hand reaches out from under the bed and starts pulling him, but it is actually Todd. Indy then sees a shadow passing by, and Todd also senses someone's presence. He calls out, asking if anyone is there, but there is no answer. Then Indy starts growling. He feels mud-covered hands patting him, so he bites those hands. In reality, he has bitten his own owner. Todd gets up to check his wound, and at that same moment, black mud begins dripping from the ceiling, and a muddy hand appears. Soon, Todd faints and falls, and Indy runs toward him, but the bedroom door slams shut. Terrified, Indy barks. Then he notices that the bathroom window is open and jumps out. Barking for help, he runs toward the forest. He soon reaches Mr. Downs' house to get help, but he ends up getting caught in a fox trap. He tries to free himself, but a shadow moves toward him. After some time, when Indy opens his eyes, he sees that he is tied up outside a doghouse with a chain around his neck. His owner, Todd, is there, and looks very angry. He places food for Indy and leaves him there. A little later, it starts raining. The soaked Indy sits on top of the doghouse roof and tries to peer inside. He sees Todd coughing violently, with that dark shadow hovering nearby. Indy looks around and sees two glowing eyes in the distance, but it turns out to be a fox. Suddenly, the dark shadow comes up behind him and attacks, but Indy crawls inside the doghouse to escape. Just then, mud-covered hands emerge from the ground and try to grab him. Indy uses all his strength to hit the doghouse, and the chain breaks open. Once free, he tries to run away, but then he hears the sound of Todd coughing. He goes near the house, where the basement door opens by itself. As Indy goes down the stairs, he sees the skeleton of a dog. It was Bandit, who had been missing for all this time. A short while later, the power goes out, and the entire house is plunged into darkness, with only the light of a few candles remaining. Todd lies on his bed, struggling to breathe. For a moment, it seems as if Todd has died, but a few seconds later, he suddenly wakes up and sees the candles blowing out one by one. As the last candle goes out, he sees muddy footprints moving toward him, and suddenly the shadow appears right in front of him. Todd runs to close the door but fails. Then he picks up a flashlight. A little later, Indy enters the room and Todd hugs him. Todd then lays Indy on the bed, but his eyes widen in terror as he sees his own dead body lying on the bed. At the same time, Vera's calls start coming repeatedly, and an empty bottle of pills is seen nearby. Suddenly, the dark shadow appears, puts a chain around Todd's neck, and drags him down the stairs. The shadow takes Todd into the basement and locks the door. A panicked Indy breaks a window to get out and then enters the basement through the outside door. He finds a cave-like place there where Todd's screams can be heard, and he runs toward the sound. After a while, Indy drags Todd out. Both of them are covered in black mud. Just then, the door behind them opens, and the dark shadow attacks Todd. Indy begins to whimper as his owner slowly disappears into the mud. Helpless, Indy watches his owner die. After all this, Indy checks the basement doors, but both are locked, and there is no way out. He sits quietly outside that cave. Soon, it is morning, and Todd's lifeless body is still lying in the room upstairs. Fortunately, Vera arrives at the house. Crying, she asks Indy to come with her. Indy leaves with Vera, and the story ends.